on Send on purpose, a channel dedicated to inclusion, special educational needs, and advocating for the best practice in industry. I want to talk today about sensory needs, and that is specific to different types of sensory needs in neurodivergent children. Many children with neurodiversity, including ASC, ADHD, experience the sensory world differently. Sensory processing is the way that the brain receives, organises, and responds to information from the body and the environment. And for some children, certain sensations can feel too intense, painful even, or overwhelming. And for others, these sensations may feel muted. So they may seek extra movement, they may seek extra pressure, extra sound, textures to feel regulated. So in saying that, we want to consider some of the common sensory patterns that our children can experience. And one of them is over-responsive or sensory sensitivity. So this child may become distressed by sounds, for example, by lights, by smells, by textures, movement, or touch. Things that others might find manageable are absolutely not manageable for certain children. So that over-responsive or sensory sensitivity can be very distressing for the child. We then have under-responsive, the polar opposite of this. And this is where the child may not notice certain sensations as quickly. For example, pain, temperature, hunger, or needing the toilet, or somebody calling their name. So sometimes we offer children toilet passes when this is one of the areas that they struggle with, because when they need the toilet, they need the toilet, but they need the toilet, so they have to go immediately. Then we have sensory seeking. A lot of restraints are given to children who are sensory seeking because they need to be held to be able to regulate. Therefore, it's super important that we understand if a child is sensory seeking so we can not get to that point, because restraints aren't pleasant for anybody involved. And we can work on ways to manage those sensory needs that stop a crisis occurring. So a sensory seeking child may actively look for more intense sensory input, such as spinning, jumping, chewing, touching objects, making noise, or deep pressure. So you might have seen things like weighted gilets, heavy bags, heavy weighted blankets, all of which please go through an occupational therapist, because it's super important that we get that right and it's safe. But they're all available and they're all great options to support a sensory seeking child. Then, where we've had the three so far, we might have a mix. So it might be that profile for the child is a mixed sensory profile. And that's where a child can be sensitive in one sensory area and seeking in another. So their needs may also change depending on stress, tiredness, environment, routine, all of these different things that can really impact those experiences for that child. So if we think about this in terms of our understanding of a sensory system, there are 8 sensory systems that we want to consider. The first is the auditory needs. So some children may find everyday sounds, for example, hand dryers, alarms, classroom noise, or overlapping conversations. They might find all of that really overwhelming. And others may seek sound, so where it might be overwhelming for one, it may be that we are seeking it for another. So things like tapping, you might have students that click a pen a lot. I know I have students like that. Making repeated noises, humming, all of these areas can be related to auditory needs. Then we have visual needs. So things like bright lights, busy display boards, screens, patterns, or crowded spaces can feel really intense for some children, where others may actually be drawn towards those things. So drawn towards lights, movement, or visual detail. Following on, we have tactile needs. So things like touch, clothing labels, seams. Seams in socks are a particularly difficult area for a lot of children. Messy play, hairbrushing, toothbrushing, or certain textures that may be really, really difficult to tolerate. And we do see this with school uniforms sometimes, so please do be flexible and supportive, because a child who has a tactile need that is sensory sensitive can be very, very distressed by that if they aren't comfortable. But then again, some children may seek touch through squeezing, so rubbing, fidgeting, exploring textures. So we have our sensory avoidant tactile needs and or, must be understood. And then children who are seeking those kind of tactile needs. We then have olfactory needs, so smells such as food, perfume, cleaning products, or classrooms. They can all be distracting and distressing. Some children may smell objects though, or people, to understand their environment. So again, it's one side to the other. It might be that we avoid that, or we just can't handle that. I want to understand my environment, so I'm gonna use these senses to help me get there. We then have gustatory needs. So this is taste and mouth. Like mouth feel, you might have children who have an oral fixator, so they are going to bite something during the class, or they just need something to help them with that. So taste and mouth feel can affect eating, drinking, toothbrushing. It may be that a child has what people refer to as a beige diet. I prefer to call it a safe diet because there's no surprises sensory wise for that child. They feel like they are safe with those foods that they know, and exploring new foods needs to be very supportive and very carefully managed. They may avoid mixed textures, they may seek strong flavours or chew non-food items. Then we have vestibular needs, so things like that support balance and movement. So some children may avoid swings, they may avoid climbing, or they may avoid fast movements, but then others may seek these out. So they may be spinning, they may be rocking, running, or jumping. Often in an EYFS nursery report, as a Senko I'll read, the child would just run all the time back and forwards, and it's a clear indication that there's something vestibular going on for that child. We then have proprioceptive needs. So this is body awareness, and it's knowing where the body is in space and how much force to use. So children may seek heavy work. They may seek deep pressure, pushing, pulling, carrying, or crashing to feel more organized and calm. And then we have interoceptive needs. So this is the awareness of the internal body, and it's things like signals such as hunger, thirst, pain, temperature, tiredness, or needing the toilet. Some children may miss these signals, while others may experience them really intensely. So in thinking about all of that then, how can we support sensory needs? The most helpful approach is to notice the patterns, to listen to the child's communication, and to adapt the environment or the tasks where possible. Support might include offering a quieter space, for example, reducing unnecessary noise or visual clutter, allowing movement breaks, providing sensory tools, using predictable routines, giving choices about clothing or food textures, and preparing a child for any change. Sensory needs should definitely not be treated as bad behaviour. That is not what they are. And they are not a choice either. They're often signals that a child's nervous system is overloaded. It might be understimulated, or it might be trying to regulate. Every child's sensory profile is unique. Key point, please don't forget that. What helps one child may absolutely not help another child. And the same child may need different support on different days. A curious, compassionate approach that adults take can help understand what that child is communicating, but equally to create environments where neurodivergent children feel safer, calmer, and more able to participate. Thank you very much.